Welcome to the Canes Corner podcast. I am Adam Gold, and if I could just use this phrase, the band is back together. It's Corey Lavalette, North State Journal, and The Athletic. He took Sarah Sivian's old gig, Bleacher Report, Too Much Men podcast, Meadowlark Media, all of that. I am thrilled that the two of you are going to just absolutely light the next 30 minutes on fire. To be on this. It says morning after podcast. This is not the morning after anything. I couldn't find an old Canes Corner podcast banner. Before we get to the Hurricanes, does it make you feel, well, Sarah, this probably doesn't even apply to you, although maybe it does since you were here for the glory years. Does it make you feel kind of bad that Florida just capitulated so badly to Vegas in the Stanley Cup Finals? I have to think that Carolina would have been at least a little bit more of a speed bump to Vegas.
I don't know. The way Vegas was so systemically good, like every single line, it was absolutely, the depth was the most insane thing in the world. And you know how they did it unconventionally, and it kind of sets that precedent that I'm sure we'll get into. But it was just like every single time with most of their opponents, except maybe Edmonton, right? It just feels like every single time it was a 4-goal lead. And once they got that lead, they just held on to it.
Yeah, and like miracle goalie, right? I mean, we saw it here with Cam Ward, and Bobrovsky was doing it for 3 rounds, and then Adin Hill was the guy, out of nowhere. His agent has to be. He made his agent so much money. I mean, he made himself money too, but oh my God! I mean, he probably went from getting an $800,000 contract to getting $4 or $5 million somewhere.
They were very good. Look, Vegas beat Carolina both times this year. And it was the Vegas game here. That's the one where we lost Svechnikov to the torn ACL. But they were very good, and they were very deep, as Sarah said. And they had a number of players that could have been the Conn Smythe. I mean, heck, it could have been, Chandler Stevenson had a great playoffs. I thought Jack Eichel was amazing in his first playoffs. I thought Stevenson was like a 3rd or 4th line guy when he was with Washington, right? Mm-hmm. And then he goes to Vegas, and they really didn't have a first line center. So, all right, why don't you do it? And so he's kind of assumed the role. It's been kind of a remarkable thing, but congratulations. 6 years, two times in the finals, 1 cup, 4 times in the conference finals. Like, everybody should start a franchise.
We should start one.
Let's do that.
Do it out at the farm with you.
Oh yes, we would. We have enough room for a rink, so we could just put the rink in pasture. We'll put it in pasture 1, in the mare's paddock in pasture 1. All right, so let's kind of reconstruct or construct this team going forward. I talked to Tom Dundon yesterday. We really talked because the gambling bill was passed. So he's excited about that. What he said basically was they wouldn't get ahead, but they wouldn't fall behind as long as we could start getting gambling revenue in pretty soon. My guess is if they're lucky, it'll be by March of next year, but at least they'd actually be able to have kind of a sports lounge there, which is cool. So let's just assume that all things being equal, a year from now, they're going to be up to speed with everybody else in terms of gambling revenue. So let's start with building back the roster. And I asked him about Aho, and he was confident that will get done this year, this summer. So, Corey, what is Sebastian Aho's next contract going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the good news is he made a good chunk of money on this last deal. So the raise isn't going to be crazy. If he hits $9 million, maybe that happens. And I think he'll get 8 years. It veers away a little from what the Hurricanes have wanted to do, but, I think they recognize this is his team, and he's going to be the guy who drives things going forward. So, I mean, I could see like 8 times 9 or something like that. It's not I don't think he'll get to $10 million or anything.
Right.
But
Okay.
I think that's a fair deal all the way around. And it's not a killer because he was already making good money. So
Mhm.
it's not like you're trying to find a way to
Right.
fit in, that amount. It's only going to be a $500,000 or $1 million raise a year if it goes to 9.5 or whatever.
Sarah, do you think Matthew Barzal is a decent comp for Aho in terms of a contract?
Definitely, especially kind of their scoring droughts that they have throughout the years. I mean, they're both incredible players, but they have also not always had the like supreme wing talent around them, right? To be able to rack up these points in ways other guys around the league tend to, someone sees. So I think that's just kind of the situation right now. And that works out well for the Canes in terms of structuring the contract. But I don't know, guys. Should we ask Eddie Olchuk what we think to Sebastian
Oh,
Aho's contract?
well, I think if Aho got paid by the cross check that Eddie Olchek imagined, then he would be making $25 million a year.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
Just had to bring that up.
How come he doesn't
Gosh.
mention that Ron Francis drafted Sebastian Aho then?
Oh.
He brought the evil into Raleigh.
Unreal. Eddie, bless his heart. He was actually, we've had him on a couple of times during the playoffs, and they've been fun conversations. The first time we had him on, it was 8.5 minutes before he mentioned Ron Francis, which I thought was a huge upset. But the second time we had him on, he didn't mention Ronnie at all. So I don't know. Maybe they've had a falling out. I kid, because we know that. Oh, just to peel back something you said, Corey, about the contract for Aho. I mean, he's 25 now, so he's 26 next year, but there's one more year left on this deal. So essentially, it would be 9 years, because I agree. I think they're going to go to 8. I mean, he'll be 34 at the end of it.
Yeah.
Or 30, maybe 35 at the end of it. First of all, I think that's probably okay. But also, I just think that you have to not care about the last 2 years of for a player like that. And I would say for anybody else that they wanted to extend for 8 years, I just think you bite the bullet the last 2 years. You want the greatness or whatever the best of the player is for 6 years, and that's just like it's like a tax to me. I just can't be concerned about the last 2 years, because if it takes a little bit longer or more and it puts you in a better position to win, I just think you deal with it.
Yeah, it's, I think everybody worries about like the Mark Vlasic kind of things where you give a guy a huge amount of money and then 2 years later he's toast and you're just like, what do we do? And I don't think that's going to happen to Sebastian Aho. And I think that's where you start to worry about the two defensemen who are up after next year. You worry about Brady Shea and Brett Pesce, and can they play can they be effective at 31? You start to worry about that if they lose a step, if injuries catch up to them, things like that. But Sebastian's been durable. I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays big. And I don't think you regret anything about a deal with him for 8 years just because of the kind of player he is.
It's also like the Hurricanes front office is very hesitant to dish out those contracts, except when it comes to their specific guys. And those guys are Aho and Svechnikov. So when Tom Dundon says that's not an issue, you really believe that.
Yeah. And I wonder, did he learn his lesson from the last time? Because, and Corey, I know you and I have talked about it. I'm sure I've talked about this with you, Sarah. The crime was not that they maybe 8.5, basically. Maybe that was a little high. Maybe the number should have been 8. But the real crime was that the contract was only 5 years. We should have been here 3 years from now, not now. But because the contract was only 5 years, we had to come back and do this again. So I think Tom, from anything, he learned his lesson about that with Aho. I don't think that'll ever happen again. If they want to keep the guy, they're going to figure out a way to keep the guy. And so I think Aho gets done. My guess is that it's 9 or 9.25, but probably not more than that. And my understanding, wink, wink, is that he is going to accept a little bit less than he would get on the open market. So he'll take a hometown haircut because he knows that if they want to add and keeps a lot of the players that we're talking about here, then he's going to have to kind of trim it back a little bit. And I think he's okay with that. I also think the head coach, I think the head coach matters too. That was the first thing that came up in a conversation I had about what Aho's plans might be. Is Rod going to be there? I think the answer is, at least in the short term, at least Sarah, how much more do you think Rod's got?
Oh my God. Don't even start this discourse. I feel like he doesn't love coaching, but he loves the Carolina Hurricanes. I think I think he wants to win a cup. Like, come on. I don't think he's going to stop until he wins a cup because they're close.
I think they're close. What do you think they're missing?
Elite sniper. And I know it's so unfair to play what if in retrospect, because then you look at everything that teams like the Rangers did that didn't end up working out. And it is kind of just a crapshoot, but it is, when we look at it in a vacuum like that, the Rangers didn't need an old guy with a hip problem that used to be really, really good. They needed a little bit more from everybody involved. So I think, I don't know. I wonder what Kochetkov is going to become. And I think the goaltending situation could be so important, obviously, as it is anywhere. But I would like to see one more sniper.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they got Max Pacioretty for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kept saying that all year long, and I just didn't understand why when he got injured the second time and they had the $9 million, whatever it was. Actually, they did, because Andre Kasha was never coming back. They had all that open cap space. I was surprised. But in retrospect, who was out there other than it was easy to just say Vladimir Tarasenko, but I mean, Tyler Bertuzzi probably played better than anybody would have thought he would have played when he got to Boston. Although that's a type of a player that Carolina doesn't have.
He was incredible just watching him in that first round.
Yeah.
I mean, he did make some mistakes that are going to make you dough your head, but like he would immediately make up for them. And he felt like he was giving the effort that a lot of the Bruins players, I mean, they weren't not trying, but it just seemed like they didn't have that clutch factor by the end of it that they had all regular season. And he came and kind of breathed a fresh life. He was also really good in the AHL and like his entire career with the playoffs. So I think he's just like, the playoff player is exactly what the Hurricanes need.
Yeah, I mean, somebody who plays just kind of a physical, just rough, almost rough housing game. But I mean, Bertuzzi's, he's kind of nutty. But I mean, he obviously was an effective player for Boston when they got him. I mean, I wonder if they're gonna, try to re-sign him. Who knows what that roster is going to look like? All right.
Corey, going to get to play for the Bruins this year.
I'm in. Put me in, coach. If I can go next to Bergeron, I'm in.
Yeah.
It was amazing how many different players it looked like they used. Corey, you mentioned the two defensemen, and Dundon kind of slid those two names in our conversation on Wednesday. He called that a priority. Maybe it's just me. I think it's more likely that Brady Shea is signed than Brett Pesce is signed for this reason. I'm not sure that Brett isn't a year or 2 years away from completely breaking down. And I love Brett Pesce. But right now, if just keeping Shane Gostisbehere in the mix for a second, Brett Pesce was their worst skating defenseman. And I don't mean that to be disparaging. He was their sixth best skater. And he's already looks like he might be losing a step. He's had injuries. I know he's probably has still a bulky shoulder a little bit. Every time he gets hit into the boards, I always worry, is that going to be the thing that knocks his shoulder out again? I love him. And for a long time, I thought he was a future captain. I really did. But I just don't know if he's going to last in the league. Is that crazy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, he's played a lot of minutes. I mean, he plays a ton. I mean, everyone talks about them as a second pairing, but they play first line minutes. I mean, yes, Brent Burns plays more than anybody, and that's, but that's more of a reflection of he's playing on the power play and on the penalty kill. As far as tough even strength minutes. Those two guys play a lot of them. And you're right, the shoulder thing's a concern. The skating's a concern. You know who he reminds me a little of, and I know that his career got derailed in a different way, but he reminds me a bit of Mark Stahl, where you watched Mark Stahl early in his career and you were like, wow, this guy's a rangy shutdown defender. Not really a ton of offense there, but, you know, can hold his own and move the puck. And obviously he ended up with the eye injury, which was a little different. But at the same time, you lose that step, you know, things change an awful lot. Jalen Chatfield's not the most experienced guy in the world, but you see what you get with an extra step. Like, he's got an extra step that, you know, and Slavin has it too, that helps fix a lot of mistakes you make. And Brett doesn't make a lot of mistakes, which is great, and his stick is great. But if he loses another half a step, you really start to wonder, you know, is 4 years down the road or something. And he's going to want to get paid. And you don't fault him on that. You know, I mean, get your paycheck. Absolutely. Go do it. But that's a tough one. I mean, I think that's a really tough one. And to your point, I think he's a great guy in the room. I think he's a great guy all around and has been a warrior for the team and everything. But this offseason will be interesting, because if he's not willing to take a shorter deal, and maybe they can talk him into, hey, if you wait 2 years or wait a year, or, you know, wait 2 years, the cap's going to go up and you're going to get paid more or something. But I don't know that's not what an agent would tell him to do, unless
that's not being honest.
Alan Walsh.
Yeah, unless you're Gavrikoff's agent and you
Dan Milstein,
and you do that. Yeah. So you know, I agree with you totally. I think that's, and I mean, I don't know that Brady Shea's not going to get an 8-year deal either. I don't think. I mean, if he wants to get signed for 5 years, then maybe you talk about that. But especially with the guys that are coming, you know, I mean, Nikishin can play in the top 4 tomorrow. And now you're not going to get him until 2025, but
so we got to wait 2 more years before the Russian bear comes over.
And then Scott Morrow is going to be a good player too. And, you know, who knows what else comes around in the, you know, Chatfield. That's the other thing I think about is, can Chatfield play second line minutes? Is he, you know, could he step into that Brett Pesce role next season if you find you can't get an extension done and your best move is to trade him now instead of losing him for nothing?
It's so tough because the defense is obviously just such the backbone of the Hurricanes. So it's just like you have to be so wary of making a move that can kind of dismantle that and move the puzzle pieces around way too much. But at the same time, it's just an embarrassment of riches that isn't sustainable to build a roster if you want that elite scorer too. So you might have to make you're going to have to make some tough decisions, obviously.
Yeah, I wonder what Brett's value is. I think Brett's still got a lot of value around the league, and man, this bothers me because, like, I don't know if Brett's going to listen to this. I don't want to trade Brett.
Love you.
I love
we
Brett.
Love
Pesce.
him. He's a great guy.
He is absolutely. I love the fact that when I walk into the locker room, which is admittedly not as often as I used to, he gives me a hard time all the time. I dig that. He's just a fun dude, and he is a great player. But I wonder if he is part of, because Sarah, you say they need a sniper, and that is 100% true. I wonder if Brett Pesce is part of how they get that sniper. I wonder if it's him and a draft pick, or it's him and I don't even know who we would be talking about at this point, but he and a legit to get a legit scorer in here who can play on the wing, whether it's the left side with Aho and Jarvis, or maybe it's on the right of Aho and Jarvis drops down. I want to talk about him. We only want to spend another 10 or so minutes because it's past Sarah's bedtime.
Yeah, I'm
Sarah's going
ahead
to
of
the club.
the group. Yeah. No, got a big weekend in Maine ahead of me.
Oh,
I'm chilling tonight.
Outstanding! A big weekend in Maine. All right, you guys. Because I have to step out for 1 second. I'll literally be back in 20 seconds. But I
kind of
want
place is
you
this?
guys. This is very unprofessional of me. I want you guys to talk about Martin Necas, and then I will jump back in.
All right, let's just talk about Adam.
So guys, Adam stinks. Necas, he might have been like a year off, but we were right about him. He is really good. Can confirm. What were your thoughts seeing him just kind of more closely than I was this year?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was really good. I think losing Svech really hurt him. I mean, you could see a drop off after that. And I don't know if that's, he's still a perimeter player. He's never going to be a get into the muck and score goals type of guy that, Svech does that, Jarvis does that, whatever. But I think you need guys like that too. We're talking about snipers. He's a guy who can score from anywhere on the ice. I don't know that he's necessarily the solution. I don't think he's going to score 50, the gifted.
Corey, was his passing good?
Yeah, right. Our long running joke between me and Sip. So, I mean, I think he's a great piece to have. The other side of it is he doesn't have any higher value than he has right now. With $3 million on his deal, if you're going to go and get a guy who makes a lot of money, chances are you're going to one of the teams that's in cap trouble, whether that's the Maple Leafs or whatever, or even Arizona, who aren't in cap trouble, but they're just in money trouble. And if you're going to make a run at a Mitch Marner or a Nylander or Clayton Keller, those are the guys that pop up to me. That's a piece you can use. I mean, they tried to use him for Tkachuk. I mean, that was the piece. That was before he had a 71-point season.
Yes.
So, it's an interesting tightrope to walk because he's going to get paid. I mean, the Brat deal kind of shows you a roadmap for what he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid more than $7 million.
100%. I want to bring up everybody we're talking about the Hurricanes acquiring has been via trade, because it is going to happen via trade if you really want that elite sniper.
Yes.
And you see the Vegas Golden Knights as the prime example of that. 12 of the guys on their roster were acquired via trade, and they were all huge. And then there's the really, really bad free agent pool this summer. There's not going to be great pickings from that. So it's going to happen via trade.
Yes, I don't think James Van Riemsdyk's going to be
No.
a big ad. There is one thing I love about Marner is that he's a good two-way player, right? He would fit right in a penalty kill. So if you use Necas, if you sent Necas and let's just say Necas and Pesce to Toronto, could you get Marner and another, because you would have to get another piece. You would either have to get somebody who can plug in on the blue line to play on a third pair, or more preferably more of a rugged forward, somebody who can play in your top nine, who could help deepen your lineup. I don't know if Michael Bunting is that guy or not.
He's a free agent, so.
Well, forget that.
Yeah.
That's why we have Corey here. Corey, what's his hometown? I'm just kidding.
Know.
So
I think it was Toronto.
It might have been. That's right.
Something Canada.
So, but I mean, is this team going to add Marner, who still has 2 years left, getting paid nearly 11?
Yeah.
Are they going to add a player that makes that?
No, but it would be so fun. I would love to watch Mitch Marner coached by Rod Brindamore. I think that could really just take pressure off him. And you guys talk to the guys in the room too. All the guys I've talked to that have played on the Maple Leafs just talk about, like, honestly, the pressure is a lot and it does affect them. And you see they have career seasons when they go somewhere else. I'd love that for him, but I don't think Tom Dundon and co are going to do that.
No, I don't think they're going to get a Mitch Marner too, but it's certainly an interesting thought exercise. I think Winnipeg is looking to move everybody.
They should, finally.
It's probably 2 years too late for them, but I honestly don't know. Is Mark Scheifele too much of a jackwagon to play here?
Yes, he's irresponsible. You see it every playoff. It's either a suspension or some type of silly injury where he barely plays in the playoffs. It's like, you can't have that, especially with the bad vibes that were so clear in that locker room. Just not really like the Hurricane way.
So I don't know who you would get off that roster.
The guy the guy that really intrigues me, and we talked about a sniper, is I've heard that even though he hasn't been the name that has been in all the controversy, that Kyle Connor doesn't fit in great there. And talk about a guy who scores from everywhere. I mean,
Absolutely.
he's a really, really talented guy. Now, I don't know, the price tag on something like that is going to be a lot. And, they want to, and if he is a quote problem in that locker room, I don't know if that's true or not. But if he is, that's not what the Hurricanes do generally. They've tried to go get good guys, Eric Halla notwithstanding.
Tony D.
Well, no,
Well,
here's
you
the
love
thing.
him.
Well, I do, but here's the thing about D'Angelo, and is that within a locker room, they love him.
True. That's
So
actually true.
we don't have to, like, we all know Tony is a nut, right? An absolute, bona fide crazy person. But they love him. They loved Tony. They would have loved to have still had him this year. But, and frankly, even though I'm pretty sure Tony and I don't align politically, I like him a lot. And we still chat. We talk baseball more than we talk about anything else. But I still text Tony a fair amount. And even during the season, we would talk. He had a rough go. Shocking, playing for John Tortorella. Who could see that? Who could see that coming down the pike?
And
All
no
right,
other person on the blue line.
Right. Well, that's true. So I want to run through a couple of players here, and we can go quickly through this. We know Jordan Staal is going to come back. My guess is 2 years, maybe a total of 7. It might be less with some incentives. Is Jesper Fast here, Corey?
I think as long as he's not going to get a big bump on what he just made. Maybe he gets $500,000 more. So as long as you get it done before, unless, the agent is saying, I've got 7 teams who saw you go nuts and lead the team in goals in the playoffs that want you. And that stuff happens. Like teams get crazy on July 1st. But unless, he thinks he's going to really get a payday, and then he's probably going to disappoint somebody. If somebody pays him $4 million a year, not that he's not a great all-around player. It's just, he is what he is. I think he's back. I think he says he had the best years of his career here, like the most fun he's had. And Rod loves him, but Rod loved Nino, and Nino left, and, Staal loved Nino, and Nino left. So, you get what you can, you get done what you can.
I think he'll be back. I just obviously everything jived correctly for him here, and it all manifested in the end. That incredible run he had, I was so proud of him. But he is such a good player that he could be it doesn't shock me that he did that, but it is just kind of not something you expect.
For 3 years, I kept saying they could play him up. They could play him up higher up in the lineup, because that's what he did in New York. He played on the top 2 line on their scoring line as a guy who dug the puck out, and just by getting the puck back, created opportunities for others. He doesn't have the greatest hands in the world, yet he scored a couple of pretty remarkable goals in the postseason. Is Teuvo Teravainen going to get another contract from the Hurricanes, Sarah?
If Aho is here, yeah, that's always just kind of the 1-2 punch. I can't imagine the team without 2 of them, or at least it just seems like a package deal, but I know that's not how it works at all. I do think he had a really rough last season, but that's
Terrible.
Just not enough of a sample size for me. I think the rest of his resume has been excellent. This year is just going to be I don't know. I just
it was a tough year. Yeah. Oh, yes. It must be turbo bounce back.
Yeah, it
Corey,
has to be.
Yeah, because he was just dreadful this year. Corey, what do you think?
I know Rod wasn't happy with him this year. That he was I don't know that he was mad at him. I think I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. I think he was. We all know Turbo's not the hardest working practice player in the world, but he's a gamer, and the thing I wonder, Siv, obviously you didn't see this, but the way his thumb looked and the fact that he played with it looking like it had been like Frankenstein onto his hand, maybe that helps mend fences a little, that this guy came back and played through a situation where he was literally walking around like this. Like he couldn't even, if he was walking, you could tell he can't bend it at all. And he played with, a broken thumb that apparently the Islanders fans think he faked.
Gotta love the Islanders fans.
So it'll be interesting. I think this is an important off season for him. He could be a guy that they use. Somebody could see like, guy who's capable of 70 points, and we could use him. And the Hurricanes could say, we need to try something different. But to Siv's point, he and Aho have been a kind of the dynamic duo a little bit, and they got to figure. It could just come down to figuring out, like, if you add another forward, does he, where does he fit? Does he fit next to Jarvis with Aho, or is Teravainen going to be back up there? And my bigger thing is, does he make it through this offseason as a Hurricane? Like, I think the next contract, I don't know. That's going to be tough. I think that might be a tough one. The bigger question is, are you willing to take him into this season going in the last year of that deal and hope that he pops off and has a great contract year? And even if you can't sign him, you get the best of Turbo for one more year.
I just don't know who's gonna, like, what the value is gonna be after that down year.
Yep. It was a tough year. And the league knows that Teuvo. I thought Teuvo looked pudgy when I think I said it to you, Corey, didn't I?
I think you called me pudgy.
No. I would never do that. I would call me pudgy. But I thought Teravainen looked like maybe I don't know what
not in shape.
Yeah, didn't typical. All right, this is where we don't have enough time to really get into it, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. And maybe this will be the last thing we talk about. Is Jesperi? I totally created a new player. Is Jesperi Kotkaniemi a second line center, or does Carolina have to get one? Corey?
You know where I'm on this. I
know. We've already talked about this.
I think he is. I think he had a terrible first, third of the season. 5 points, and I think his first 25 or 26 games. After that, he had, 38 points. So he was a 55-ish point player if you take that chunk after. And what's crazy is when that early season, it was him, Svechnikov, and Necas, and they were tearing it up. Possession-wise,
right.
Svech was scoring in, buckets, and KK was getting no points. It was like, he's out on the ice, he's doing everything right, and there's no points to be had. I think he is. I think he's the most physical forward they have outside. Jordan Staal gets there too, but I think he's their guy who is most willing to push back a little bit. He's big and strong. He needs to get stronger. He needs to get faster. But I think outside of, the elite guys, Teravainen and Aho, Svechnikov, I think he's probably their best passer up front. I think he has great lateral vision. He finds guys. Part of the problem is they're going north-south. He's a very good east-west passer. So I think he is. I'm probably the last person who thinks he is. And but I think you, especially at that number, it's not a bad number. Like, everyone's like, it's a terrible contract, but less than $5 million for even a top 9 center, especially going forward after this coming season when the cap's going to go, I think
are we sure? Do we promise?
Well, unless there's a worldwide pandemic. What's the odds of that?
Don't
it's going to go up.
It.
Going to go up $1.5 million next year. Sarah, do you does Jesperi Kotkaniemi do it for you?
Listen, the more I'm starting to cover the league at large, I know this is like a duh moment, but I just think the power of who is around you, who is on your wing is so important. And I do think Svechnikov returning and helping him out will definitely, like, they obviously tear it up, and whatever line, however that fits, like, it's going to move the depth chart in a way that affects Kokniemi positively. I thought he had an amazing playoff for the way that he's so physical, and people see him wrong, right? People see him as this person that's going to, or at least they used to, as this person who's going to come in and score these pretty goals or whatever it is. No, he's like a great net front presence. He's a great or a good two-way player. I think he's like, I think he could be on a cup team, the perfect Stahl replacement. I don't hate him as the second line center, but I love another scorer somewhere in the mix.
Yeah. See, I see him as a third line center, and I think that's fine. The contract in terms of the cap hit is okay. I still don't know why it's 8 years, but that's fine. It is what it is. It was my problem with the Victor Rask contract back in the day. It was like, why is it 6 years? Why can't that contract be 3 years? That would have been so much more sensible. But I just don't see Kokoniemi. If you are a Stanley Cup contending team, I don't see how he's your second center, and we're not sitting here going, well, we need more offense. We need more offense. And if he was to give it to you, that would be gravy. So I think they need somebody to slot in ahead of him, in between Aho and him. And I think, Sarah, when you say that he could be the replacement for Stahl, he's never going to be Jordan Stahl. Nobody will in the eyes of the head coach. I'm not sure Amy Brindamore can rise to the level of Jordan Stahl. I mean, I'm only partially kidding at this point. But I think Kokoniemi could be a third line center. You can use him in a two-way role. I would like to see him. I don't know, maybe he's not that good at it. He has not really been part of a penalty kill at this rate. I know we haven't talked about him, but Seth Jarvis became a damn good penalty killer.
That's when you know Rod likes you, when you're not in the doghouse, when you're on the PK.
Holy cow, I thought Jarvis might have been their best forward in the postseason.
Electric.
I loved everything about him. We can't make him taller, but I think he'll get stronger. I mean, he's 5'10". He's not like an Oompa Loompa. So I think he'll get stronger, and I think he will eventually figure out a way to put points on the board. He's not afraid of the middle of the ice. God, I love everything about that kid. But really, I just think Kokoniemi is his third line center, so I think they need somebody to jump ahead of him in that spot. That's all.
Well, to your point earlier, I think he's not all that different from a guy like Chandler Stevenson. Chandler Stevenson doesn't score a bunch of goals. I mean, I think he maxed out at 20 or something, had maybe 18 this year. Got a lot of assists. That's more Kokoniemi's game. He was a second line center on a Stanley Cup winner. I think there's a chance it could work there. To your point about Jarvis, I think a lot of people saw his numbers and thought he took a step back, and I thought he took 4 steps forward. I think what a great year for him to have, of just like, and he said, I rebuilt, we rebuilt my game from the ground up. We rebuilt it. Like, yeah, we knew you had a ton of talent. You could come in and score, some goals as a rookie, but his defensive effort, his penalty killing, all of that. I mean, and sign him to an 8-year deal, because we just want him around to talk to. Seriously.
Rod would always say, and this stuck with me, that his favorite thing about Jarvis was that he wanted to learn. So that makes perfect sense. That, of course, sometimes it looks like you're taking a step back if you're not just scoring these easy points, but he's putting him in these tougher situations.
All right, Sarah, real quick before we say goodbye about Seth, what would it take to get Jarvis to sign an 8-year deal if you're the Hurricanes right now? Knowing that there's more offense to come, if he took an 8-year deal now, what would that number have to be?
Oh, my. Like, the landscape right now is just insane, because a lot of agents and a lot of teams thought the cap would be rising higher. So it's really a lot of people are doing the bridge deals. So I feel like a long-term deal is going to have to be expensive. Oh, 7, 8?
Yeah, that's what I think it would be. And I don't think the Hurricanes are going to do that right now. And if I were Jarvis, I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't. Do not do that.
I think the Hurricanes would be thrilled to get him at like 8 times 7 tomorrow, but I don't think that's going to happen. And I think it'll be probably a 2 or a 3-year deal, maybe with little steps going up. Maybe it's 3-5-7. So the qualifying offer after the 3rd year is a little bit higher. And I would, if I were Carolina, I wouldn't be afraid to do it this offseason, even though he's got 1 more year. And I would say, if I were the Hurricanes, I would go out and do that with Jalen Chatfield tomorrow. I would sign him to a 4-year contract extension and hope I could get it at 2.5, and that he would accept it, because I think, as Corey said earlier, I think he can play up. I think he can play in your top 4. All right, Sarah, what's your summer going to be like?
Ooh, I have been going to like 1 million. I'm averaging 1 million weddings per 60. So
Wow.
more weddings.
Analytics.
Going to the draft in Nashville. Corey's going too. So
There'll be some bachelorette parties there for you.
Oh God! I just went to Bridget Condon's bachelor, and I tried to talk to you. Remember the day after?
That's right. Voice. You needed all the chamomile tea.
Yeah, we had fun,
I appreciate you doing that.
Of course. God, Austin, Miami. My cousin's getting married in LA. There's a lot going on. I just kind of want to take a second to chill. But
you should
see if that's possible.
Go to the Cape.
I will, with Bruce Cassidy as he lifts the cup for not the Bruins.
Wow, unbelievable. Corey, what's your summer like?
I'm going to Italy. Going to Italy in a couple weeks. Yeah, middle of July. So 2 weeks in Italy.
Wow. Amalfi or where?
Everywhere. Rome, Venice, Tuscany, Amalfi Coast.
Oh,
my wife's motherland, like the town where her family came from. So it's going to be cool.
Oh, I'm having a Godfather throwback moment here.
Yeah, leave the gun, take the cannolis.
Go,
that's my life story. Take the cannolis.
Go see Don Tomasino. All right. Well, I hope you guys have. I'm sure I'll talk to both of you. I'm saying goodbye like I'm never going to talk to you again. But thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it greatly. And that's Sarah Civian. She's the best. At Sarah Civ on Twitter. Oh, you are. Stop. And Corey Lavalette. You're also the best. You can be tied for first.
We're tied.
And that's cool. I appreciate you doing this. And until next time. Is that cool? Any parting words before I click goodbye?
Have a great summer.
I'm buying Civ. Have a cool summer, KEWL.
All right. Yes. You guys should see each other at the draft.
Yes.
And I will say sayonara for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.